ring if you're ready to care. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only WETOODEEP. Turn it up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is slapping me, yes, slapping me.
What is good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Slapping Me Community Show. It is January 5th, 2025, as I'm recording this. And just like the episode I did over the weekend on Friday last week to sort of start the new year, I don't have a lot to talk about in the wrestling world. There's not a lot to really discuss for me. So we will really just be using this episode to talk about the NFL playoffs. We got some questions from the Discord. I have a couple things I want to yap about going into all of that, but one big topic that, you know what, it's been one of those days, so it's just something I need to get off of my chest. And so that is what this episode will be about, mostly just sort of talking about the NFL playoffs, what I think is going to come out of it, as we are officially done with the regular season of the NFL. Playoff time is here. But before we get into anything, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you appreciate this show, and you're listening on the audio, so I made a business decision, you could say, at some point last year, I don't remember exactly when, that I was going to go solo again. And if I was going to go solo, I really didn't see the need to continue to record with video. Right? That the statistics showed me that a majority of the listeners really came from the audio side of things, and that some of the video podcasts on YouTube, when we were doing them, got 50, 60, 70 views at the highest, but a lot of that wasn't transpiring into subscriptions or long-term viewership of the episode. It was 3 seconds, we get counted as a view, and then they move on. And so I'm really focused, and if it was up to me, I think myself as a listener of podcasts, I prefer audio podcast unless I'm watching. There's one particular podcast that I listen to that's more political in nature, that they discuss a lot of current events and a lot of things that happen on the news, and they in order to talk about that, they show a lot of graphs or a lot of video clips, and so I tend to try to watch those episodes, right? But I'm okay with audio even on that podcast. Most podcasts, I think, are very listenable from a audio format, right? Like the Joe Rogan show, you don't need to watch the Joe Rogan show, right? Just listening to the audio is fine, right? A lot of, I think it's part of the reason where you have someone like Cornette, right? Who I don't think Cornette has a video version of his show. I think it's just audio, right? And I mean, he does numbers, right? I think, right? And so my main focus is to try to gain viewership on the audio streaming, right? Not that I'm going to discount YouTube. But more so that I want to gain viewership on streaming services. Rather, and mainly two services, right? We offer a whole bunch, right? You can listen to this show practically anywhere you can listen to podcasts, right? But there's only two that really matter, right? And so that's Apple Podcast and that's Spotify. Google doesn't matter as much in this game. And Amazon is not the most important place either. Now, if I was releasing books, I would only release on Amazon. One, because I could self-publish. But two, that's where people buy books now, right? People don't go to Books A Million or Barnes & Noble anymore to buy books, for the most part, right? Some people do. But the charts that matter when it comes to book sales are the Amazon charts, because that's where the consumers are buying books. And so I would put, if there was one place, if I ever released a book, which by the way I did, it's not necessarily the greatest thing ever, but it's on there. And I made sure, hey, we're going to self-publish with Amazon. One, it's free to do it. Two, I don't need to have, I don't have to buy a ISBN number, because Amazon uses their own ISBN system. I think it's got an AIN number or something, like an ID number for the book, right? And Amazon provides those for free for each book you release. Only for Amazon.com sites, right? But Amazon's where people buy books. So if you're going to self-publish a book, make sure it's on Amazon. At least, right? And so if you're in the podcast space, you have to make sure you're at least on Spotify, because that's the number one place for podcasts. But then two, Apple Podcasts, right? And so for me, the way I think of it is Spotify is the most popular, but there are the people like me who have Apple products, and the Apple Podcast app is free on Apple products, and so I don't have Spotify Premium because I pay for Apple Music. It's the same service for the most part, but right. The whole point in saying this is, if you're listening on audio, I like to yap a lot, right? So eventually we'll get to the point. If you're listening on audio and you made it this far, there's still a lot left to talk about. But before we get there, hit the thumbs up or a like button or the follow button or the subscribe button, depending on the service you're on, right? Tell that service you enjoy this podcast, right? If you haven't, leave a review on the streaming service you are on. Whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify. It's on iHeartRadio. If you're on that, if you're listening on iHeartRadio, I highly doubt you are. I haven't looked at the numbers here recently as to where people are listening from, but I guarantee you most of it is Spotify. In fact, I know the number one place the podcast is listened to is Spotify. I think it's about, actually, you know what I'll do? I'll pull up the numbers. I'll pull up the numbers now so I can, y'all know I like to be real, raw, and relevant. I'll pull up the numbers by the way, I use RSS.com. Now, I'm not an affiliate, so I don't get paid for this. So this is, right? But they now offer, and to compete with Spotify, which bought what was Anchor, right? So a lot of people, 8-9 years ago, started getting into podcasting from their phone because there was a website named Anchor that did free podcast hosting that would do all the work for you to get it on Spotify, get it on Apple Music, and all the other platforms. You didn't have to do anything. It used to be before them that you would have to go and submit your RSS feed, and it was a tedious process, right? They did all of that work for you. Well, Anchor was free to do it, and so what a lot of people did was they downloaded the app, and the cool thing about Gary Vee, if y'all remember him, he was really into promoting Anchor, and he said there's no reason why you shouldn't have a podcast, right? And everyone should have a podcast. And I actually agree. If you like to talk to people and have something you're interested in, even if it's not going to succeed, right? Like all-time viewership on this podcast over the 4.5 seasons, 3.5 years or something like that we've been doing this podcast for, right? My lifetime number of plays is less than 10,000. We'll surpass 10,000 this year, right? But we're at about 9,600. Don't expect because you have a podcast you're going to blow up, especially in this sphere, right? But the point that I'm trying to say is everyone had a podcast, right? And it was free, and then Spotify bought it, and it kept it free, but it was known as podcasting by Spotify, and it was still free. You could host, but you had to do all the work because now Spotify did. They're not going to do the work to get you on their competitors, so you had to manually do all of that. Well, this app, RSS.com, I felt was a better that they provided more services, in terms of advertising and distribution and monetization. And I was looking, I was like, if this thing blows up, I want to be able to be in a place, right? And so I went to RSS.com. Well, you used to have to pay for it. Well, they just dropped their free plan. You get all the same things the paid plans get, from my understanding, but it's free. Now, I've had it for free for several months, even before they dropped it, because I was threatening to go back to Spotify podcasting hosting, which was free just for the monetary thing, so they automatically swapped me over to the free plan before they dropped it. Right, I was sort of one of the first people to get it. So I haven't had to pay for this in several months, which I'm thankful for. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to say, let's go over the last 90 days. If I pull these numbers up, I had to find, right? As I pull the numbers up, 34% of the listeners over the last 90 days, we've had 813 downloads or listens of the podcast, various different episodes. Over the last 90 days, over the last 3 months, we've had 800 and something. We've had 351 since December 28th, right? And so we can go in a little bit deeper. Over the last 3 months, we've had 800 plays. 34 of them come from Safari. 34%, come off of a Safari, probably through a phone, through the Safari browser. 31% come from Chrome. 19% are using Microsoft Edge. That's absolutely insane. So y'all are listening to this from different browsers, which is surprising to me. Spotify has about 5.3% of the views in the last 90 days. Apple Podcasts has about 3.3% of the views over the last couple days. Now, what's interesting is the countries. 44% of my listens in the last 90 days have come from the United States. 44%. 43% competing have come from the country of Singapore, which are probably not necessarily all legitimate views. 3% from Brazil, 1% from Russia, 1.2% from Australia, UK's in there, right? Canada's in there. The number one city in America is Ashburn. I'm assuming that's Virginia. I don't know anyone in Ashburn, Virginia, so I don't know who's listening and why there's 226 views from Ashburn in the last 90 days. I appreciate it, but someone in Moscow's listened. Someone in Sydney, right? We got Philly on the list. So, all that to say, thank you from wherever you're listening from. I appreciate it. We got a Saudi on here, Iraq. It's crazy. We got a single listen from Baghdad, Iraq. That's absolutely crazy to me. We got someone from Austria. Hopefully it's a Gunther fan in the last 90 days. Brazil, like 97 different cities in Brazil. Anyway, we'll put the numbers away and we'll move on from this crazy yapping session that I'm on. Like I said, there's not a lot to talk about in the wrestling world, and I don't want to just jump into the main topic of football in the show early, because I got another topic. The whole point of this 17-minute intro is to say, like, share, and subscribe. Leave a review if you can for me. And maybe eventually I'll get to the point. Now, I have a question. I know we're going to go to questions from the Discord. I have a question to the Discord and the audience that I would love your answer to. This show is pretty, set in how I do things. I used to do a segment with Wavy D where we would do like tournaments of different, basically like smash or pass type thing. And I don't necessarily want to bring that back. But do you want other extracurricular segments? If so, give me some sort of, what would you like to listen to is essentially what I'm getting to. What type of segments would you like me to do on the show? What would you like to hear? This is a community show as it is. And so with that, as the community grows, I would love input onto what you would like to listen to. Right? I want to make the show what you guys want to listen to. What I feel like is a lot of times I get in the zone of, well, I don't want to talk about that. And that we'll take that into consideration. But this is a community show. It's ultimately all about the customer and the community and the person listening getting the proper experience. Because in the end of the day, what I'm trying to sell myself as being different is that I'm not trying to sell you a product. I am the product. I'm not trying to. I want to just I want to sell community. That's what I want the product to be, and I want to do product research and what is the people who are consuming the product, what do they want, right? I want to listen to the fans. I want to, right? So tell me if there are any type of segments you would love that could be a weekly thing that are feasible. Would a like a, we called it Thirsty Tuesday, and I'm not necessarily, like, again, I don't necessarily want to bring that back. I feel like that could be a little bit divisive in the community itself as to who can participate and all of that. But would you guys like bracket style tournaments again? And if so, provide some feedback there, right? But let's get into, I told you I had a topic that I kind of wanted to get off my chest. And I mentioned it's been one of those days. And so the topic that I want to discuss is corporate greed, bro, is essentially what it comes down to. I say this coming off of probably one of the most strenuous days at work that I've had in, well, the almost 2 years that I've worked for the company that I work for. So, not complaining. I enjoy the place that I work for, but when you wake up in the morning and you get a text, right? You wake up, I'm sitting there. I don't use TikTok anymore, so I'm scrolling through whether it's YouTube Reels or Facebook Reels or X Reels, and I'm scrolling through these videos, and I'm enjoying the 30 minutes I have from when I wake up after I take my morning shower. I go back, I lay in my bed for about 30 minutes before I have to get ready. I wake up super early so that I have a little bit of time to enjoy my morning, because depending on the type of day, I may not be able to consume content during the day. So I try to enjoy myself in the mornings before I go to work, and in the afternoons or evenings when I get home from work. I try to do things that I enjoy because I don't have a lot of time to do it. Anyway, so I'm sitting there watching these videos, and I get a text from my boss. And it's a group text with a bunch of other people, and she's explaining the situation, that we had two people who are out sick again, and they're moving people to different locations. And then I get the news that I get to run 2 stores by myself. Nevertheless, these are 2 of the busier stores in the district, and I work in self-storage, so it's not like I'm running 2 grocery stores or anything. Like, it's not like there's a lot of foot traffic necessarily in terms of like renting storage, especially in January when this is slow season, right? And about the trends are going about 50 to 60% in self-storage. About 50 to 60% of rentals are done online. And so there's not a lot of work for me to do in terms of renting units at 2 stores, right? But the work really comes in is we're off on Sundays, and so Mondays are typically pretty busy in terms of a lot of people moved out. So during the day, like, let's say this was a Tuesday, right? And I worked at a store on a Tuesday. As people move out, I'm in the office. They tell me, we go clean the units, and we make them available, right? But when we're closed, there's on a Sunday and people move out, there's no one to tell, so then you get in Monday and you're constantly just cleaning units, right, on Monday, because you got to catch up from Sunday. You essentially have 2 days worth of work to do. And I got to do that at 2 stores, 2 pretty busy foot traffic stores where people move in and move out quite often, right? The turnover of occupancy at these 2 stores are pretty quick, right? Whereas other stores in the district, people tend to stay a little bit longer. Anyway, so I get to these stores and I'm working, and I like to sit and talk to myself or think and have conversations, try to figure things out, especially if I'm by myself, to pass the time, right? So I'm doing this work, and I'm having this thought. I'm like, why am I doing 2 people's work, like 2 people's job? Like, so I have this thought. I go to look at the schedule, and it's of my opinion that if you have a 9-store district, every store should have a store manager and an assistant, right? That's kind of the way the system was created. But this is where corporate greed, I think, comes in. They don't always budget for that. And so our district, we have 9 stores. We have 13 employees, right? 8 of we have 9 stores. 1 technically doesn't have a store manager at the moment. Either myself or another employee will probably get that store whenever they open it up. And that's the first problem, is they won't allow them to hire or promote anyone because it would be a higher rate of pay and the budget doesn't, right? It's all about money, right? And so that store's really slow traffic anyways. It could be run remotely. Doesn't necessarily need a store manager, right? So that store ended up getting closed today. The person who was supposed to work at that store, gets moved to another store, the store that I was originally scheduled to run, and I get moved to run 2 stores by myself. And the whole problem is the 2 people who are running the stores that I'm running called out, and the store managers themselves were scheduled off. Now, we have 9 stores in the district, 1 of them closed. So technically we have 8, right? That can, right? 8 store managers, 4 of them were scheduled off today, with 4 assistants, 2 of which who called out. You see how the math ain't mathing, and a lot of this math not mathing is because corporations, large corporations, don't allow, and I had this, don't allow people to hire, and don't allow proper staffing. And storage isn't the first industry I had an issue with this. If you've ever worked a restaurant, you understand this, especially if you ever managed a restaurant. And then I have the experience of hiring workers, right? And so we would be short-staffed, and when I worked at Zaxby's as a manager, we had open interviews every Tuesday. Like, whether we were fully staffed or not, we did open interviews so that we can get candidates whenever we were open. And whenever someone applied to the GM that I had was very big on trying to promote his managers to GM spot. Like, he wanted the whole district to be GMs that were trained by him and promoted through his system, right? To this day, he's the best boss I've ever had. The servant leadership he tried to teach, I'm telling you, a lot of companies don't like the idea of servant leadership, right? I don't understand why. I think servant leadership from your managers is the best, right? The idea is you can't serve your employees. You have to let the employees serve you. And I don't know where this comes from, but servant management is the right. And I tried to employ that to the best of my ability when I worked as a manager in restaurants, to where my expectation was, if I won't do it, I'm not going to ask you to do it. And more than likely, I'm willing to do anything in that restaurant, right? I did everything in there, right? And so if I'm able to do it, I'm going to train you how to do it, and then I'm going to expect you to do it when I ask you to do it. And if you don't do it, I'm just going to go ahead and do it, right? So it's going to get done. But if I have to do it, someone's going to be in trouble, right? Because I'm going to show people how to do it. I was always cross-training people, right? I felt that there was no reason why anyone in that restaurant couldn't do anything at any time. Just that it wasn't manager responsibility like counting money, right? Or hiring people, right? But it was my job to hire. So I understand, like, it used to be a little bit frustrating because especially towards the end of quarters, when they're trying to be low on budget, if we became short-staffed at some point because people quit or whatever, hey, we got some good candidates. We just can't hire right. How many people? Like, my question every Tuesday when we did it, when I got in, because our open interviews were always from 3 to 5 p.m., and I was always the closing manager, so I would get in at 2. So around 2 is when the lunch rush dies, and I come in. First 2 things I do is I make the prep list for nighttime prep that I have to do. Then I go to the GM who always worked on Tuesdays. He always opened Tuesday mornings. How many people we hiring today? Or how many people, if they're good enough, can I hire today? And there would be some Tuesdays where they would be like, we're going to be honest, we can't really hire anybody. Just do the interviews. Tell them, if they're good, we'll call them back. And I was like, I got to be honest with them. Like, at the end of the interview, I'm going to be honest with them. We're not really, we like you. I think you'll be a good fit. We just don't have the space right now. But when we do have the ability to hire, we'll call you, right? And I hated always having to do that because that means you're going to go find another job somewhere else. But I understand, that type of situation. And again, yes, you're in business to make money. But I ultimately feel that at some point, corporations have to... So, I have to be honest, right? Because I understand their side as well. Like, I'm going to come from this understanding their side. The company I work for, I think, made like $4 billion last year. And that could be something where you're like, billionaire greed. Until you look at, that's what they brought in. We don't ever look at what they spent. And I think net operating income, once you count all the cost of everything, cost of acquiring new companies, because they've merged with at least two different separate mom and pop companies that I know of, probably more, but price of acquisitions, price of, employee wages and fixing buildings and new builds and all of that. If you take into that account, these companies don't make a lot of money, as much as you would think, right? They might make, on $4 billion, they might make $1 billion, which is still a lot of money, but 75% of their income, or 75% of the money they bring in goes right back out to pay bills for the most part. And so I understand the concern with, like, we have to save money, and I get it. But at the same time, like, you have to start, like, allowing your employees a little bit of help. Like giving some help for your employees. Because there should be no reason why a store is closed. And definitely no reason why an assistant manager, who can't ever be promoted anytime he tries to be promoted, right? And I have, experience with this. I have opinions as to why this is. My opinion on that is pretty simple. I think at some point there's a scale where you become too valuable in the position you're at, right? So sometimes people get promoted who are super replaceable and super bad at their job, but they're replaceable and they never help. They never, hey, can you go help at this store? No, I'm only going to, I know of a couple employees who are assistant managers in districts, in my district or in other districts, who, they only work where they're scheduled. Hey, can you go help out here? No, we're not going to do that. And those people tend to be promoted faster than someone like me who is, hey, you're scheduled here. You think you could go down here instead? And my answer is always yes. I always want to be available. But what I've recognized is that availability and me always saying yes and me volunteering to do that has made me not replaceable. And because I'm not replaceable, they can't afford to move me up to where if I become a store manager, I can only go to one store because I have to run my store. But if I'm an assistant or a floater like I am now, I can go anywhere. And so, like, I'm not stupid to this, because the same thing happened when I worked restaurants, where I got to the assistant manager position, but because I was the only assistant manager in my district when I worked at Zaxby's who would travel literally to any store in the district. And I mean, we had stores in Charlotte. The city above Charlotte's name is Concord. And yes, we said it correct. Concord, not like the New Hampshire where it's Concord. Concord. No, it's Concord down here, just like it is in California. And then we had 2 stores in that city. And then the next closest, we had several in Charlotte. And then we went up a little bit up the interstate to a town or a city named Lexington, and had one store there. And then we had a store in Virginia, right across the border of North Carolina, Virginia, in the city named Danville. We had a store there. Literally would get sent there every Thursday for the last 3 months that I worked for that company, because they didn't have enough managers to work that store. And so I was the only manager who would volunteer on a dime. Hey, so-and-so's going out. You think you could work 3 months at this store? Sure, why not? Hey, Lexington's store had a manager go on maternity leave, and another manager fell in the freezer because she's not the brightest bucket in the, not the finest pear in the batch here, or whatever analogy you want to use. She fell in the freezer and broke her coccyx bone or her tailbone. You think you could go and run the store as an assistant, but you're going to run it for 3 months until they come back fully? Sure, why not? Oh, by the way, can you also go up to Danville, Virginia? Sure, why not? Right? And then the time I question, and this is great. Like, I have experience with this, right? The time I question it in a text to the district manager, and it was nicely worded. Hey, man, essentially the text was, it was professional, so it wasn't the slang that I'm about to say it in. But essentially I said, hey, man, we've met and talked, and I don't think that's necessary. I don't need another lunch with you. But we've talked about it, and I told you I don't want to be an assistant. Like, I want to move up. Like, I really like this company, and I want to move up in it. But I just have this feeling that that's never going to happen. Like, is there something I'm doing wrong? Because I keep hearing all these other people getting promoted, but I'm not even being considered. I just want to know, like, what I'm doing that I need to improve. Literally, I was asking what I need to improve on 3 days later. Not even lying. I sent that on a Friday. It was my day off. I had just worked in Virginia, in the Virginia store. It was a crazy day. It was during COVID. It was 2020. I had drove up. So, because it was during COVID, the Virginia at the time, this was early in COVID. This was before their elections that year, where they ended up getting a Republican governor. Before then, they had a Democratic governor during the beginning of COVID, and they did like mandatory curfews. Everyone had to be inside by 10 o'clock, unless you were working. If you were essential, like restaurant workers were. So we closed at 9 o'clock instead of the normal 10 or 11. We closed at 9, and we gave everyone little pieces of paper, because we had to close the restaurant still. So we typically were sending people home around 9:30, 9:45, and we were able, through the government, to basically print out a form saying, I'm an essential worker, I'm leaving work, I'm literally leaving work, that's why I'm out, in case they were pulled over. And they had proof of that they were working. But anyway, I always try to be out of there early so I can get across the border before getting pulled over. Because that's crazy, bro. I mean, it's only like a 2-hour drive from my house. That's how close it was, right? And I live an hour from Charlotte. So I'm like in between the two cities. But anyway, so I was scheduled to get there at my shift was 12 o'clock to 9, or 12 to 10 really. And I get a call that the Wednesday night I'm closing in the Lexington store. And I get a call from the manager that's closing the Danville, Virginia store. And she was like, hey, I know you're supposed to be here at 12 or 11 or whatever time, but I haven't had a day off in 12 days. I was like, that's crazy, first off. And she was like, I was wondering if since we open at 11, if I if I get here at 8 and cold open the store to where all the prepping stuff is done with the preppers, can you get here at 11 and I'll go home at 11 and you can run the whole shift or the whole day? I'm like, sure, that's perfectly fine. I said, I mean, if you want, I mean, I can't be there at 8 when you get there, but I can be there at like 10. And she was like, that would work. I was like, all right, cool. I mean, I'll leave my house at 8 and hopefully there's no traffic. And the plan is to be there by 10:30, which is exactly what I did. Well, I get there, and that manager's not in the store. Another manager from one of the Charlotte stores was there. And I said, what are you doing here? He was like, well, I was told to come open. I was like, okay, well, I'm closing. Anyway, 2 o'clock comes around, and another manager from the another Charlotte store, she shows up. And about an hour before she showed up, I get a call from the general manager of the Lexington store first, and then a call from the district manager, basically saying, what are you doing in Danville? And I said, well, I was under the impression, no one ever told me I wasn't going here. In fact, I literally asked last week before the schedule was posted, am I still going to Danville? And was told yes. And that was last Saturday. It's been 4 days. If you guys weren't planning on needing me up here, no one ever told me no. And I said, I drove 2 hours up here. I'm not driving back. And, it's 12 o'clock now. By the time I get there, it's going to be 3. The shift's already going to be halfway over, right? Because the North Carolina stores were closing at 9 as well, I believe, at that time. But basically, I basically told him, like, I already drove up here. I'm working. And so they were like, that's fine. So then the other closer manager gets there at 2, and I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm supposed to be closing here. Anyway, she's the one they ended up promoting to the general manager of that store over me, even though every single crew member at that store, including the assistant manager that worked 12 days in a row, that called, that I told you about, she was like, I'll pay for your apartment to get you moved up here if they promote you. I'm like, bro, I'm down for it. You got to convince them, though, right? And so she ends up getting promoted like that Friday to the GM spot of that store. And I hear about it. And I send that text message basically saying, what do I got to do? Because everyone else is getting promoted before me. And 3 days later, I kid you not, I end up getting fired. It was on a Tuesday. I remember it because the district manager walked in 10 minutes before I was supposed to go home. And so I opened that. It was a Tuesday. It was April 21st, 4/21. The worst excuse to get fired on a day after 4/20. I wasn't even high. It wasn't a drug test. It was, hey, you are not following uniform when you passed 7 other employees whose uniforms were not tucked in. But I'm the one that's not following uniform. 10 minutes before I'm supposed to leave. Anyway. You can tell I'm a little bit still agitated. It's been 5 years. Still a little agitated about that whole situation. But, yeah. The whole point of this is to say that these corporations, there's a principle that I believe in business. If you don't treat your employees correctly, they're not going to treat your customers correctly. Or they're going to provide a service that's not good because they're unable to provide a service because there's no help, right? And so you have to, I think at some point, will just take care of the customer logic amongst corporations We're like, you work for us, you need to take care of our customers. Well, you have to, if you don't take care of your employees are either going to leave or they're going to do a pretty bad job at taking care of your customers, which means you're not going to have customers, right? And so that logic used to be used at the employees. Well, if you don't treat them right and they don't come, and you'll lose your job. And, well, at the same time, well, if you don't treat me right, I'm just going to leave. And I think the newer generation, the millennial, so the boomer and the Gen Xers sort of had this mindset of we're just going to work ourselves to death. And the millennial, Gen Z or Gen Alpha generation says we don't have to take up and actually go through and take the sort of slave labor that middle class, lower class, retail type workers have to go through, right? And so we don't have to do that type of labor. And so if you ever noticed, like the boomers, when they were in charge, while they've been in charge, have put so much bureaucratic red tape in the way of starting a business. And I think they've done it on purpose, because a lot of them were able to start their businesses without a lot of the red tape. And they recognize that a lot of their employees, if they had that same freedom to not have red tape and to, hold on, let me do something here. All right, there we go. I think a lot of the boomers realized if their employees in the generations to come had the same freedom to start their own business, A, they would do it and they wouldn't work for them, and two, there would be a lot more competition. And so I think there's a little bit of a plan as to why there's so much bureaucracy given by the boomers in government. And anyway, let's get to the point y'all came here for. There's no wrestling to talk about, so I had to fill up some time. But let's talk football. We're gonna talk playoffs. We're going to talk playoffs. It's playoff time here in the NFL, and I told you I was going to predict the playoffs, give my thoughts on, well, maybe ESPN will, hey, there you go, ESPN, I opened it to get the standings, and it's trying to get me to buy their $30 a month app. Anyway, that's crazy. All right. So, yeah, playoffs. So, we're going to predict the playoffs. I'm going to give my opinions on each one of the teams. That would be the charger asking to be plugged back in. I'm trying to get situated here because this chair is not comfortable. So, I'm trying to move over to a more comfortable location. There we go. All right. Let's see if I can open ESPN without video playing. There we go. So let's start with. We'll start with the AFC. We'll go down. We'll talk about each team, what I think about them, just briefly, and then I'll make the predictions. So we'll start with the 1 seed, the Denver Broncos. I think the Broncos are very beatable. I do. I think the Broncos are very beatable. They got the first round bye, which is great. But I don't think – I think they're losing their first game. They're one of the teams that I feel like Bo Nix had like 92 yards yesterday, and he played a pretty good portion of that game from my knowledge. I think they're beatable. It's just my feeling. Like, I don't think they're the best team in the AFC. We move to the 2 seed being the Patriots, and I'm going to try to be unbiased here. I think the Patriots genuinely are the best team in the playoffs. I just genuinely like I think if they played the up to their potential and how they've played when they've played really good, and they, Mike Vrabel in the locker room was after the game told the guys, like, hey, we took a nap there in the second quarter against the Dolphins, right? And he says we can't take naps in the playoffs. And I like, if we play football at the way we played football against the last 2 weeks against the Jets and the Dolphins, and how we played against teams like Tampa and all of that, and we don't take naps, and we don't fumble, and we run the ball well, and Drake May's on point, and the defense plays well. Like, this is the best team in football this year. Just culture-wise, I think just unselfishness all around. I think the Patriots are the best team in the AFC. And right behind them, I believe, are the 3rd seed, the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? I think the Jaguars... Though I think the Patriots are the best team in football right now, I think the Jaguars have the best chance, in my opinion, to make the playoff or make the Super Bowl in the AFC. It really depends on seeding, and in who wins and who doesn't. But I think the Jaguars are sneaky good when they're at their game. I think Trevor Lawrence is and has proven this year he is a top 10, if not close to a top 5 quarterback. I think a lot of people were starting to write off Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback, and what it really needed, and I've been saying this about Trevor, is he needed a head coach, right? I try not to blame the front office, the cons, that much, or any owner of any football team, unless they're super hands-on in the process like Jerry Jones. Then I critique Jerry Jones, right? But ownership doesn't really have a lot to do with whether you're successful or not. I think outside of the fact that they make the hires, I think what is more important is your GM and your head coach. And for whatever reason, whether it was Doug Peterson or Urban Meyer or I think they brought Tom Coughlin back for a year. Here recently, it just hasn't been, the best coaches. Liam Cohen's a great coach, right? And he was a little corny with the Duval when he got hired, right? But it's a little corny, but he's a great football player. Like, he's a player's coach. He has fun. He's a great head coach, and he's got a great team. And Trevor Lawrence is showing when you put talent around him and you give him a coach and you get good play calling, and you can win games. Like, Jacksonville should have been here at the top of their division 2-3 seasons ago. But they just never had talent around them, and they never had a coach or a GM that really necessarily cared to build a program. And I think that has changed. Jacksonville is going to be scary good for the future. The Steelers, bro, let's talk about that Steelers-Ravens game real quick. Absolutely insane. So the first half was boring. And I started to write the game off. Like, I was just sort of scrolling through my phone on Twitter and Facebook, watching reels. Just like, this game's boring. I remember saying out loud, this game's boring. And then the second half happened. And the scoring started to light up. And the last, 8 minutes of that game was fantastic. Great showdown. Comes down to the last kick in the end zone that at the beginning of the game, before the game started, the same end zone that a Catholic priest poured holy water in the end zone. That same end zone the Ravens were kicking into to win the game after the most unlikely of catches, pun intended, by Isaiah Likely, to set up the game-winning field goal. And this dude misses it from 20 to 30 yards? Absolutely insane. With that being said, Pittsburgh's losing in round one. Pittsburgh's not a good team. They're going against the Texans, which we'll go ahead and talk about them as the 5 seed. I think the Texans are super scary. Of any team the Patriots could potentially end up facing in the conference championship game, the Texans are the scariest opponent to me to have to face. I mean, this was a team that started 1-3, 1-4. A lot of people were writing them off after the start that they're not going to make the playoffs. They have a lot of luck. They win 8 of their last 10 games or something like that. Go on a win streak. That's absolutely... The Texans are crazy good. And so, what a team they have there. The 6th seed is the Bills. I think they're the worst team in the playoffs. AFC, NFC, all around. I think the Bills are the worst team in the playoffs. Legit the worst team. Right? It's the Josh Allen show. Defense has a little bit of support every now and then, but their run defense is atrocious. Has been all year. They have to go up against the Jaguars in week 1, which is probably the worst draw for them. There was actually Bills fans hoping that the Bills would lose so that they would be the 7 seed and have to play the Patriots, because they felt that game was easier. But just genuinely speaking, the Bills, I believe, are the worst team in the playoffs. They're just not good. And it's sad because this is the easiest playoff run. When you look at the teams, right, there's no Chiefs, there's no Ravens, there's no team that, they don't have a high seed because they didn't win the division this year. And so there's no home field advantage. So that's a negative. But even still, the 2 teams that really were your sort of kryptonites, and the team that was your kryptonite, it seemed like every year, and the Chiefs had their worst year in 7 years, 8 years. This should be a home run in the park for the Bills. They're I think, the most experienced team in the AFC. Right? But I also think they're the worst team in the AFC. And in the entire league that made the playoffs. The 7th seed being the Chargers. This is a good team. The Chargers are a good team. I'm a little bit scared to play them as a Patriots fan, because Herbert is great. I love Justin Herbert. I think he's mildly, and when I say mildly, I mean wildly, he's wildly underrated by a lot of people. Amari and Hampton's a great running back. They got some great receivers. The defense, I haven't paid enough attention to the Chargers to know what their defense is like. You never know. And this is one of those teams that I don't think they're going to go on a run. But this is one of those, if anyone was going to upset anyone, this this would be one of those upsets. And so it's one of those things where the Chargers, I think they're better than the Bills. I think they're better than the Steelers. And I might want to take what I've just said about the Bills back, because I think the Steelers might be worse than them. But the Steelers aren't actually all that bad, because they just got T.J. Watt back. They're going to get DK back this week from his suspension. I think I'm going to still go with the Bills being the worst team. But the Steelers are close. And so I think the Chargers are better than the Bills. I think they're better than the Steelers. I don't think they're better than the Jags or the Patriots or the Texans. And I think just barely the Broncos edge them out. And so the Chargers, I think they might be the best of potential surprise in the first round. But right. And so as we go into predicting games here in the AFC we'll go ahead and predict the entire AFC. So in the wild card round this week, Chargers at home against the Patriots. Or excuse me, on the road against the Patriots. Patriots at home against the Chargers, I should say. Nighttime game, cold, East Coast, New England, 8 o'clock. It's going to be cold. All of that, plus the fact that I think the Patriots are the best team in the league right now. I think it's too much for the Chargers, and I think the Patriots will win. Bills traveling to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. This game could go either way. I think this will be a closer game, but I do have the Jaguars sneaking this one out. I think it's going to come down to, I think Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than Josh Allen. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. I don't think Josh Allen has that clutchness when it matters to win this game. I just don't. And then we have the Steelers at home against the Texans, where I have the Texans winning. Which, as we re-rack them up and reseed, the Broncos are at home. First game for them in the playoffs. They'll get the Texans. I told you, I think the Broncos are losing their first game. I think the Texans are going to go into Pittsburgh and win. They're going to go into Denver and win. And they're going to go to the conference championship game. I think the Texans have an easy road to the conference championship game, genuinely. I don't think the Broncos are good. I really don't. Right? So Texans lock up a conference championship game. And then we have the Jaguars going to New England. I'm assuming this one would be an early start, if not a Saturday night. It could be a Saturday game, but I think it'll be an early start Sunday game. I do have the Patriots winning in my official predictions, but this could be one of those games. This is the scariest matchup I think we could have, is to get the Jaguars. Because I think the Jaguars could beat us, genuinely. They're probably my favorite. Here's what I say. I think whoever wins this game goes to the Super Bowl. Because we go in Houston, we'll have to travel to them. Houston traveling up to New England. I think New England's going to the Super Bowl and winning the AFC. They're going to go to the Super Bowl. We'll predict the Super Bowl last, right? So we go over to the NFC. And let's talk about them. We'll begin with their one seed being the Seahawks. What a bone-crushing game that was. Seahawks 49ers was a pretty boring game until I went to sleep. Heartbreaking loss, I'll be honest, for the Niners. I kind of thought they would get it done. But I'll say this. Their rivalry jerseys are the best of the rivalry jerseys. Those black jerseys they wore this past week on Saturday night they were spectacular. Anyway, the Seahawks, I don't know how I feel about them, because part of me wants to say they're the best team in the NFC and they deserve the one seed. But the other side of me says, I don't know how legitimate this is. Is Sam Darnold actually this good? And I think the team is good. It's the Sam Darnold element is what scares me about him in the clutch situations. But I do think they're the best team in the NFC. I think they do deserve the 1 seed. And I think they'll be fun to watch to see how this plays out in the playoffs. The 2 seed is the Chicago Bears. Now, I don't think I picked, and I know I didn't pick the Bears to win the division because I picked the Lions to go undefeated, which I was brutally wrong. But just 8 games short of perfection. Anyway, I did pick the Bears to make the playoffs, though. If you remember, if you go back, I don't know if I put these would be YouTube only episodes when the wrestling and the football show was separate. You know, for 3 episodes of the football show, the first 1 or 2 that I did predicted the playoffs. Who I think would get in the playoffs. And I did pick the Bears to be the 7 seed. I did think they would get in. Just over the Cowboys. But I don't know how to feel about the Bears. I really don't. I haven't watched a lot of them this year, so I don't know what their strengths or weaknesses are. I will say this. Caleb Williams is a really good quarterback. Regardless of, all the nail polish and all of that and all those comments, extracurricular stuff. On the field, Caleb Williams is good, bro. I think we have to admit that. And he has a team around him. Like, he's not that bad. He's not on a bad team. He's got Roma Dunze and DJ Moore and I don't know how to pronounce the running back's name. And defensively, they're good, right? And so I don't know how I feel about the Bears, right? They're one of those teams I genuinely don't know how I feel about them. The 3 seed, I know how I feel about the Eagles. I don't think the Eagles are good at all. I just don't. Now they're getting better, like they're playing better, but it really feels like this team is bipolar, and I feel they need a new OC. Their OC is absolutely garbage, and their fans will admit that. In fact, they've been admitting it for a while this year. He's back. I don't know. It's one of those teams where, like, from a talent perspective, probably the most talented team in the league. When you look at Lane Johnson and Lane Dickerson, or is it Lane Dickerson? Landon Dickerson. So Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, and what's the other tackle's name? Jordan Mailata on the offensive line. Probably 3 of the most talented offensive linemen in the league. You have Jalen Hurts, which I think is I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback. I do think he's in the top 12 range. If I'm being genuinely honest. And so I think it's probably if we're being honest, quarterback's their worst position on offense. Because you go to the receivers, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, you got top-tier starting receivers. I don't know who the slot is off the top of my head. Is it Dodson? I don't know. The tight end, Goddard. I've always said Goddard is a top 6 tight end in the league. Closer to 5th or 6th. He's never been elite, in my opinion, but I feel like he's serviceable. And then you have the running back with Saquon. And like talent-wise on the offense, you get an A. Right? If you go to the defense, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Jaden Phillips. You got some talent in the front four. Brandon Graham's experienced. Not sure how much he'll play. Right, the back end. Right, you with Reed Blankenship and Cooper DeJean and Quinshawn Mitchell, I think is his name, and I can't think of the other corner that they got from the Giants. Played with the Giants last year. I can't think of his name. Either way, like they're decent on defense. Their defense is their best part of their team. The linebackers are good. N'Kobe and Nolan Smith and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Like talent-wise, you have the best roster in football. No one's going to argue that, I don't think. And so this really just comes down to scheme and play calling. And that's the area I just don't think they're good at. And it makes the team look awful. It's inconsistent. And you're playing a tough team in the first round. We'll get to them in a minute. The 4 seed being the Panthers. This is a team that, I live in their backyard. This is a team where I really don't know what because I don't think the expectation this year from Panthers organization or Panthers fans was the playoffs. And I know they're 8-9, and they really had to rely on the Falcons of all people to get in the playoffs. The Falcons had to win to get in the playoffs, or for the Panthers to win the division. I genuinely do not know what to expect about these Panthers, because I think they're good. When they're on the top of their game, they're a good football team. But I've also seen them, like when they played against us in week 4, where they got the crap beat out of them. So I genuinely, this could be a Super Bowl run, or this could be an embarrassing defeat. And genuinely, I think it's going to be one of those things where I don't know how I feel about them. I don't. The 5 seed is the Rams, and here's what I'll say. I think they are the most overrated team in the NFC, right? Because I think the Eagles, people feel the same way that I feel about them. Like, talented, can win, can go all the way, but it's all about play calling, and I think people rate them correctly. The most overrated team, I think a lot of people feel that this Rams team is the best team or could be the best. I think they're highly beatable. And I don't trust it at all. And I think they might be one of those teams that, just disappoint this weekend. 6 seeds, the Niners. This is a team, with respect to listener, Kara in the Discord, with respect to it, here's what I'll say. Their defense is fantastic. I think their team is talented. They have to play better than they played on Saturday. Brock Purdy has to be on top of his game the entire playoffs if they're going to even dream of a chance. Now, I said Friday that I thought the Seahawks and the Niners were the best 2 teams in the NFC, and I'm going to stick to that. I think the Niners and the Seahawks are the best 2 teams in the NFC. And so I'll stick to that. And then we have an interesting 7 seed with the Green Bay Packers. I genuinely like. I don't know how I feel about this team. They're gonna have Trayvon Diggs, but without Micah, I just don't know how I genuinely don't know how, because I also think this team is talented. And at one point I thought they were going to win the division. I don't know. I don't know about this team. Genuinely. Just don't know about this team. And so, as we predict, Green Bay travels to Chicago. I do have Chicago winning this game. I think this is the most unpredictable game for me of the two, or of all the games in the first round. This is the most unpredictable because I really just don't know about these two teams. It's a great division game, division matchup. I think Chicago comes out on top, and they win. We have San Francisco traveling to Philly. It's a 4:30, I think, Eastern time start. And this is where I think the first sort of, I guess we can call upset happens. I have San Fran winning. I genuinely believe that's going to be the result, right? I don't think that the Eagles' defense is going to be enough to match up against, but in order for this to happen, Purdy's going to have to be on top of his game. And I think it's going to happen. The Rams travel to Charlotte, North Carolina for the second time this year to get beaten. I think the Panthers are going to beat the Rams. I really don't like the Rams. Not because, I hate them. I don't think they're good. I think they're beatable. I think there's a limit there. And I think the Panthers are going to be the team that beats them. All right, so then San Fran travels to Seattle. Because of the way the seeding works, San Fran then beating the Eagles will have to go back out west. They'll play out west. This will probably be a night game against Seattle. I think the best two teams, and so I think what's cool is you'll have I think the best two teams in the AFC play on divisional weekend with the Patriots and the Jaguars. And if they were smart, because I think how they'll do it, if I remember correctly, I don't know if all 4 divisional games get played on Sunday. I think it's 2 and 2. If they were smart, they would do the Patriots-Jaguars as a night game for Saturday or Sunday, and the other night game for the other day would be the Seahawks versus the Niners. I think the Niners beat the Seahawks. I think Purdy's going to be on his game, right? I genuinely think when it comes down to it, I think the Niners are the best team in the situation. They have a coach that's been here. They have some players who have been here in this situation. I don't know how much I trust Sam Darnold in this situation, in this clutch situation. From a talent perspective, I think the Seahawks are better, but playoffs are a different game, and I think experience matters. I think defense matters, and I think the Niners have a better defense. And so I'm picking the Niners. This is where things get a little bit crazy because the Carolina Panthers will travel to Chicago to take on the Bears, and I'm saying this again. I don't know how I feel about this, but I think this is the best draw that the Panthers could get. I have the Panthers winning. Again, two really unknowns in this. I think the Panthers win. I do. I genuinely feel confident in that prediction of the Panthers beating the Bears in the divisional round. So we get to the NFC Conference Championship, which will be hosted in Charlotte, North Carolina, because they're the 4 seed over the 6 seed, with San Fran traveling to Charlotte for a chance to play in San Fran in the Super Bowl. Now, this is one of those games where this is where I think experience matters, genuinely. I think San Francisco's winning. Now, I have a thing with my friends where I picked Carolina because my best friend's a Carolina Panthers fan, and I just wanted the Patriots over the Panthers as my predictions in his little league. But I genuinely think the Niners are winning this against the Panthers. I think the Super Bowl, genuinely, will be the best two teams in each conference, which are the best team in each conference, which I genuinely believe are the Patriots and the 49ers. When it comes down to experience, culture, clutch, right, aspect of the game, I think all things considered, from a talent perspective, Seattle and Philly might be better than everything. From a talent perspective, Josh Allen's probably the best quarterback in the playoffs. From a talent perspective, things are different. But when it comes down to we've been here, we got to play the games. How is this going to play out? I think the best two teams in the playoffs are the Patriots and the 49ers. I think that will be the Super Bowl. So we get the Super Bowl in Levi Stadium, home field advantage for the 49ers. Literally home field advantage for the 49ers in the Super Bowl. And at that point, I think this is going to be a close game. I think this is going to be a fun game. And I think the Patriots will end up etching out a victory against the 49ers. I think it's going to be close. I do. And again, it's not biased. Like, y'all know me, I'm not biased, right? I genuinely believe the Patriots are the best team in football. From a if Drake May wins the MVP, he's going to be the first quarterback in NFL history to win the MVP without a single other person on that offense being a Pro Bowler. The first ever MVP of the NFL to not have a single other Pro Bowler on the roster, on the offensive roster. The Patriots only have 2 Pro Bowlers this year, Christian Gonzalez and Drake May, right? Which I think is absolutely crazy. But they're not going because they're going to the Super Bowl. So you could free up their space. But just genuinely, I think the Patriots, from a culture standpoint, from a team standpoint, I think they have it figured out. I think they're clicking. And I think that Super Bowl, Patriots 49ers, would be absolutely entertaining. With Bad Bunny at halftime, I'm not watching the halftime show, so that don't matter to me. But I think that'll be a fun matchup. Though Panthers-Patriots again would be really fun. That would be, so from a aspect of what I think would be the funnest matchup would be the Panthers and the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Because just think about how crazy that would have been. So I put that bet down back in last June of 25. I put a bet down, $20 on the Patriots and the Panthers to make the Super Bowl. And the win of that, put $20 down bet to win $38,000. Now, the Patriots started the season 1-2. We lost to the Raiders. We beat, I don't remember who we beat week 2. Who did we beat week 2? I don't remember. And then we lost to the Steelers after 6 fumbles. And what a game that was. So we started 1-2, and I was like, yep, this season's not going to go the way I think it is. And the Panthers didn't start off all that hot. And I'm like, you know what? They're offering me a cash out so I don't lose all my money. I'm just going to go ahead and take it. And here we are in the playoffs. The Patriots are the 2 seed, and the Panthers are in the playoffs. And there's legitimately a chance that I cashed out way too early. Because even if I waited to cash out to say now, what's not to say that I could have cashed out, and rather than only cashing out, I think it was like $6 that I was able to cash out. So I ended up losing 18, I don't know how to do math. I ended up losing $12. 14. I don't know how to do math, apparently. Look, I went to school in North Carolina. We're 48th in education. So don't blame me. I can hardly read English. Anyway. But a Panthers-Patriots Super Bowl, because if the Panthers win, like without a doubt, I'm at the parade, bro. It's in my backyard. Without a doubt, I'm in the parade. And so I think that would be, if the Panthers win the Super Bowl, first off, just crazy odds that the worst record in the playoffs are the Panthers. And if they make it to the Super Bowl and win with the worst record, with a losing record, shall we say, an 8-9 record, to win the Super Bowl would be absolute carnage. But yeah, man, at the season, this playoffs is gonna be fun. But let's wrap this up. I yapped a lot at the beginning. We just talked about some football. Let's talk about these questions from the Discord. So we start with DJ Wavy D. Wavy D sent in the question. Oh, shit. We all know the saying, if it doesn't happen on TV, then it's not canon. With that being said, what, in your opinion, is the best way for WWE to use house shows and live events, given fans upload pictures and videos all the time? Very good question. From a wrestling perspective, this is a great question. So, from personal experience, in that I just went to a house show for NXT about a month ago. And so I didn't say this in my episode after where I talked about it, but I'll go ahead and share it now. Before the show started, one of the WWE officials came to, it wasn't like anyone I would know, right? Or like any big name, right? But one of the guys who sort of sits behind the barricade, and he's basically the first point of contact if anyone were to jump the barricade. But if you're jumping a barricade at a house show, you got issues. But he came around and was telling the arena staff, hey, this is how you do your job. This is what we want you to do. When the bell starts, we want you to sit in the chair, look out through the crowd. This is what we want you to watch for. When the match is over and the fans are standing up, you could stand up, right? Your backs have to be, to the ring the whole time. You have to look out in the crowd, right? And then one of the things that they said was, we're going to play a little video that says no video recording at all. It's prohibited. We take that very seriously for these house shows. And this was literally a conversation 3 feet from where I was sitting. So I turned around and I'm like, hey, do y'all really enforce that? I said, I'm asking, I'm not going to take video. I don't take video at events I go to because I like to experience the event and not try to capture it, right? So you don't have to worry about me. I'm not going to use my phone at all during, maybe some pictures. And he's like, pictures are okay. But especially at house shows, we do enforce this policy. I was like, because I've never seen it enforced at a Raw or a SmackDown. Do you guys enforce it at house shows? And he says, yes, especially at house shows, we're a little bit more strict on it. We will kick you out, and if potential there could be potential prosecution, and it's a misdemeanor. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. He was like, yeah. I was like, so what's the strictness for? And they were like, well, if you think about it, we're doing a live show here in Greensboro, but we're doing the same show tomorrow night in Columbia. And if the spoilers get out, or if we like to run the same things, and you might spoil the show, and we want to try to stop that. And I'm like, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So the premise of this question, let's talk about that mindset. If it's not on TV, it's not canon. That's a Vince McMahon mindset, and I used to agree with it. But I think it worked best pre-social media. And so I think what needs to happen is, as they start to do more house shows, it looks like they're planning on doing more house shows, at least for NXT. As they plan to do these live events and these house shows, that I do believe that they should play into and continue the story that we see on TV at these shows. Because they do get spoiled and they do get posted, and but I also think it adds to the FOMO, right? If they go to a show in New Orleans and they do an NXT live event in New Orleans, and Ricky Saints is wrestling for the NXT championship, and right, that's a type of event that'll get people to go to the house show, right? And I think, like, imagine on an NXT saying, hey, we don't have to wait till deadline, or we don't have to wait till such and such. I'll see you this Saturday when we go to Nashville or wherever NXT Live is going that weekend, right? And then imagine, immediately leaving that in, and Vic Joseph or Booker T saying, hey, by the way, if you didn't hear, we'll be in your city this weekend, and here's where we'll be at, here's where you can get your tickets. And the amount of ticket sales that could generate, I think, would be fantastic. And I think that would be great business to integrate your stories. But also think about the surprise if, like, a title changes at a house show. Now, that's going to be spoiled online. So think about playing that into your storyline, right? I think that would be very fun, just honestly. And so, yeah, I think the old school Vince McMahon, if it's not on TV, it didn't happen type mindset. It worked before the internet, before the social media age. But it doesn't work anymore because social media does exist, right? So I think they should just allow it to happen. Mix it with your stories. Don't run the same event multiple days in a row. And yeah, I think you should play into it. Yeah. Next question. We got a series of questions from Kara here, the queen of the Discord, as we shall say. Her first one, she's going to delve us into the world of geopolitical drama. What's your thoughts on the U.S.-Venezuelan situation? And how do you feel about it, essentially? So to explain how I feel about it, we have to sort of set the context. And the context is this. I'm a big proponent of national sovereignty. So what do I mean by that? Well, unlike the grifters like the Nick Fuenteses of the world, who chant America first, but to him, America first just means America only, right? And so to me, America first to him means just don't do business with the Jews. To me, America first means not just American interest first, but American interest only. That it's not the America as a country's responsibility to make sure that Israel or Ukraine or whatever gets babysat and can survive. They have the right, one, to national sovereignty without us interfering, and two, It's just a waste of tax money. I don't know if you guys know, but like a large percentage of your tax money over the last 2 decades has gone to Ukraine rather than U.S. interest. And so I'm a big proponent of America should take care of America. Venezuela should take care of Venezuela. And if the Venezuelans can't stand up for themselves and they get taken over by a dictator, I genuinely don't think that should be America's priority to care about. Because the question is sure, communism is bad, right? Dictatorships are bad. But why was Brazil not concerned? Why was Colombia not concerned enough to try to do something about it? Right? And so we have to ask these questions, like, why does this have to be America's issue? Like, why does this have to be our problem? And so, with that being said, I also believe in the rule of the Constitution, which says that Congress must declare war, not the president. And whether or not you agree with it, with what I'm about to say, what we did was an act of war. So the justification being made is, well, he was sending fentanyl into America, which, by the way, Venezuela sends very minimal amounts of fentanyl to America. It's not practical to send drugs from Venezuela to America. It just wouldn't make, like, the boats wouldn't make it. There's no point. Like, they would probably send it through, like, to Trinidad or the smaller islands if they're sending it. More than likely, if they're sending drugs, it's like cocaine. A lot of the fentanyl is coming from Mexico. So am I to expect that Mexico's going to have their leader kidnapped in the middle of the night? Probably not. Right? And so my biggest thing, so I could care less about Maduro, what they do to him, what happens to him. He was communist. He was a dictator. Sure, but let's get rid of him. Absolutely. Let's defeat communism. My bigger concern, though, is not the event itself. Okay, I'm fine that it happened, but it's what they're not telling us. It's almost like that people are just completely forgetful of the propaganda that was used 2 decades ago by George Bush that allowed us to capture Saddam Hussein and to go into Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran and in the Middle East. It's the same sort of propaganda, right? Well, there's weapons of mass destruction that weren't there. There was no proof of it, and they went in without any proof, right? And so there's a bunch of right-wing rhetoric of, well, they're sending drugs, and that's an immediate threat. Now, if they're sending drugs and there's proof, sure, that is an immediate threat to American citizenship. It has killed people. I'm fine with it if there's proof. But the thing is they're not showing the proof. And so for me, it's the same thing that I said back when Trump bombed Iran earlier in the year of 2025 in the summer. I said, if he had proof that they had nuclear weapons that they were immediately going to use against America, show me the proof and I'll shut up. But until then, you don't have the jurisdiction to make that decision, in my opinion. And the same thing I feel here. Show me the proof and I'll shut up. Because this feels like the same propaganda that was used to get us into the Middle East for 20 years. And the last thing we need is another forever war. Because what's not being said about this conflict is what Venezuela has. Everyone knows about it now because social media is a thing and people are talking about it. But I think this has a lot more to do with oil than it does with fentanyl or drugs. Right? I think this has a lot more to do with that Venezuela has the largest oil reserve in the world and did not allow America to participate in it. In fact, kicked out Exxon and Chevron, and they were doing business with apparently China and Russia, right? And so, boom, we now are taking over. Everyone said, well, the war was over in 90 seconds. We took them, we're not there. I'm like, well, Trump literally said in his speech, we're going to control the country until there's a peaceful plan to have someone else run it. Which simply just means we're going to install someone that's favorable to us so that they will give us oil rights. There's a name, Maria Machado, I think is her name, off the top of my head. Watch out for that name to be... she just won the Nobel Peace Prize. She dedicated her Peace Prize to Trump. I think she's very favorable to Trump. She's been fighting against Chavez and Maduro for like 2 decades. I think she's going to be installed as the leader of Venezuela at some time this year. And she's going to give America access to the oil in exchange. It's probably going to be like an 80-20 deal where America gets 80% of the profit and Venezuela gets 20%, which is going to look good to Venezuela at the time. And again, whether that helps or not, we'll see. But it's definitely, this is all about oil, in my opinion. And so I just wish that they would be honest about it. Just honestly, I think, right? But also my thing is, I don't think another generation of children should be forced to fight a forever war that the bureaucrats and the elite, like Trump's not going to send Barron out on the battlefield, is he? So why should someone in the Midwest who barely struggles to make it paycheck to paycheck, why should they be fearful that their 18-year-old son who signs up for the military gets sent to Venezuela for American oil interest? Why should that happen? Right? That's the fear. That's my immediate response, and my immediate fear is that this becomes another forever war. Now, if it doesn't, then it doesn't, and I can be wrong. But I think this type of regime change and thing, we've seen it before. We've seen it fail a lot in the past, and in the immediate response to me, it just feels like we haven't learned anything from Afghanistan. And I don't think we should send another generation of children to a foreign country to die for something that has zero to do with their life. Right? I just don't think that we should do that. And it is what that is what that is. So that's how I feel about it. Kara's next question is, if all 32 teams had a Royal Rumble of one player to represent each franchise, who's the final four and who will win? This is tough because I didn't prepare beforehand. This was completely off the dome. I don't even know who would represent each franchise. Myles Garrett's representing the Browns. He's in the Final Four. So Myles Garrett for real in the Final Four. I think there's no one on the Patriots I think who could make it. No one on the Bills that I think could make the Final Four. Trying to think of like who's like a scary player. Like Myles Garrett is going to be the big beast monster muscle guy. Trying to think of like good representatives of franchises. I think George Kittle will be in the Final Four. So we'll do Myles Garrett, George Kittle. Trying to think of like a small guy who could participate. Trying to think like what's a running back or someone that might be able to. Oh, Scatterboo. Scatterboo won CTE. I don't think he'll make it to the Final Four though. Derrick Henry. I like Derrick Henry. I think he'll. So we got Kittle, Myles Garrett, Derrick Henry. I need one more to represent. See, if this was 4 years ago, I would say Aaron Donald. But we don't have Donald anymore. Let's go Michael Parsons. Let's go Michael Parsons. So here's what I'm thinking. Like, if we're having a legitimate Royal Rumble sort of... There's no... These are all massive athletes, right? And so I'm sitting here like kickers aren't making it. Like those are the smallest dudes on the field. The kickers or the punters are not making it. Like your strong guys are going to be the ones who make it, right? So, Myles Garrett, without a doubt, is the scariest player in the league. Like probably the best player in the league. Derrick Henry is. He's understandable. Like he's self-explanatory. Kittle is just crazy. He's a wrestling fan, so I got to put him in here. And then Michael Parsons. So I think of these four, I think Kittle gets eliminated first, finishes fourth. Right, he's third. I think Michael Parsons then gets eliminated. And so that leaves Myles Garrett and Derrick Henry. Which I think are the only two who could really challenge each other physically. But where I don't know, because I think Myles Garrett's crazy fast, too. I think footwork would be important here. You know what? I'm saying King Henry wins. I think Derrick Henry, would win that thing. Then she said, would you rather have a pause button or a rewind button for life? I don't know what a pause button would do, right? Because you'll still have to push play, and the same events will play out. This is one of those questions for me. If I'm honest, just from a psychological, sort of philosophical perspective, I don't like this type of question. Because my philosophical opinion is I would, like, everyone asks all the time, would you go back in time and kill baby Hitler? And my answer is no, because I don't want to be the guy who changes the time. Like my belief system tells me that everything happened the way it's supposed to happen for a reason. And the kill baby Hitler thing is more of a would you kill a baby, knowing that what his future self would do, and that's the psychological question. But the answer for me was no, I won't kill a baby. Just to answer that question for you. But also, like, I'm not a big fan of this idea of, like, would you go back in time and change the past? Because I'm of the opinion that everything happened to you in life that was supposed to happen for it was either a teachable moment, as Mr. Chase would say. Like, literally, I believe everything that happens to you is the result of your own stupidity. I'm not saying karma, by the way. I'm saying that decisions have consequences. So if you steal and you get caught stealing, you're going to jail because actions have consequences. It's not karma, right? Karma as a general principle can't be something you can apply to every single person because we've seen people do bad things and good things still happen to them, right? It's I think from a principle, it's just stupid to begin with. But bad things happen sometimes when you make stupid decisions, right? Actions have consequences. So things happen to you for one of two reasons. First, their consequences are responses to your own stupid decisions. So you do something stupid, we typically call that fuck around and find out, right? Or number two, it's a lesson you're supposed to learn from. And I can get sort of hyper religious in this and say that everything that happens was planned before the creation of the world to happen. And so, right, now that doesn't answer the question, and I understand the question. And if I had to pick between the two, it probably would be a rewind button. Because I just don't quite understand what a pause button would be useful for. At least with the rewind button, I could redo the mistake, right? And so, or rewind the mistake and not make the mistake, right? Part of me wonders if with a rewind button, does that not rewind my memory? But also, like, when you rewind something, like if you have a VCR and you have Kara, you're young. Do you know what a VCR is? You're younger than me. Have you ever? I'm playing with you. But if you have a VCR player and you have not a cassette tape, damn. But even if you had a cassette tape and a radio, right? When you rewind the cassette, you're not changing anything about what's on the cassette. You're just replaying it. So even then, like, does a rewind button change the past or just replay the past? And does a pause button stop what's about to happen, or only, or does it give? You see the way I'm thinking about this question, right? So then we go to the next question, which is from B Master. If the U.S. makes Venezuela a state, which country would you want to be next? I don't think this happens. I could see it happening because part of me, in the aftermath of on the day it happened, I was having a conversation with someone. I lean super conservative, but I have people that I talk to on Discord that lean a little bit more moderate left, right? And I was talking to one of them, and we actually agreed about this whole thing being propaganda for war and oil, right? And I was talking to him, and about this idea of Monroe Doctrine, and I think Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. Lindsey Graham's stupid, by the way, and closetly gay. Just never seen him with a woman. Closet gay. And he posted out, instead of Monroe Doctrine, he called it the Donroe Doctrine, because let's grift everything. But we were talking about this, about like the idea of like, what if Don tries to make like a campaign to annex Central America and South America or whatever, and like the entire American continent is just America. Now, by the way, would not put that past him, because guys, that's how you get a one world order. Like it's interesting, right? I said back in 2015 that I felt Donald Trump was a Trojan horse to get the far right conservative who hated Obama and hated globalism and the idea of a one world order, one world currency, one world religion, new world order type thing, right? Too sweet. But I said back in 2015 that Donald Trump could be that Trojan horse that would get the people who would hate it if Obama tried to do it, but would love it if someone like Trump, who spoke their language, like I don't believe he believes what he says, but I believe he is a Trojan horse to instill one world government, one world religion, right? And what would be a better way to do that than to create the American country, where the entire continent of America, like the same people who are anti-globalism, right, are being very globalistic and trying to annex Greenland or annex Canada, that we've talked about, that they talked about early in 2025, or Venezuela or whatever, right? So genuinely, I think Puerto Rico should be a state. It would be stupid. From a conservative point of view, I don't want it to happen, because Puerto Rico's pretty liberal and would give the Democrats more electoral votes and a potential to win and more representation. Same thing with like a Canada, right? If we took in Canada, all these crazy MAGA right-wingers are like, oh, we need to take Canada or Greenland. I'm like, you do realize that most of the population in those countries are liberal, and would not, if Canada became an American state, the conservative GOP movement would not win an election ever again. That's how liberal Canada is. But also, Canada's like a large country. Like, is Canada just going to be one state? Because people in Alberta are definitely not liked by, the people in Saskatchewan, who are sort of country hillbillies, who are the conservatives of that country. They're not liked by the people in Toronto, Ontario, or Montreal, Quebec. They don't like each other. So if Canada's just going to be one state, or is it going to be 7 states where each province becomes a state? Like, how is that going to work, right? And so I don't think Venezuela becomes a country, but it would not surprise me. If I had to pick one that I think Puerto Rico, just honestly, it's a territory already. I just genuinely believe if we're going to make any country a state, it should be Puerto Rico. But I don't know. I don't want it to happen, so I don't even have an answer for it. Like, I think it's absolutely insane that's even a talking point from the conservative movement. B-Master then asks, why can't WWE ever strike when the iron is hot? It seems like they only want to make superstars and not when the fans want them to. I don't have an answer as to why they always wait. I think a lot of it is if someone gets over, genuinely over, and you reward them for that, and it's outside of the system, then I don't really know how to word this, because I think a lot of it has to do with Vince McMahon didn't want people to get over outside of his system. I think with Triple H, he has a plan in mind 8 months in advance, and so sometimes people get hot randomly, and he doesn't change plans because he has a thing in mind, and so sometimes it feels like it's too late because he's not going to change his plan. But genuinely, I think a reason why I wouldn't do it if I was in charge of WWE is I don't think the fans know what they actually want. Because we've seen historically, we want Jay becomes champion, and guess what? They turn on him, right? And so how many times does that have to happen before WWE says, you know, we're not going to listen to them. We're going to force feed them what we want them to. And that's their job anyway as storytellers, is we're going to tell you what you should like. And I think that's their perspective. I don't have a problem with that either. Last question from two questions from B Master here. Would you rather start your life over with the knowledge that you have right now, or would you rather stay in the present with unlimited? I'm staying in the present with unlimited money because, first of all, I don't want to relive everything I don't want to relive life. But. Yeah, unlimited. You had me with unlimited money because money is the only resource that I know they say knowledge is power, but you could be smart and knowledgeable and wise and broke and not have very much power there, right? Money is power. Now, because money, you could be dumb, stupid, and the richest person in the world, right? And you would be able to control the world more that way. Just look at Washington, D.C. We had a lot of stupid people there. And they have a lot of money. So, I think 100% I would rather have unlimited money in the present where I'm at. Get myself out of debt. Advance, my position. Because ultimately power is more important than knowledge. Like, genuinely, life is all about power. You either have power over someone or someone has power over you. And so it's always about authority and power. That's what life comes down to, right? And then secondly, the last question from B Master and of this segment, of this episode is, what is your favorite memory from WWE and what is your saddest memory? So both revolve around the same person. Now, I'm going to answer this question sort of kayfabe in that I don't like the moment anymore because of the person. In terms of the person that is the moment sort of ruined the moment by some of the comments he's made about the moment. But I'm going to answer this from what was my favorite moment as it was happening, and what was the saddest moment to me as it was happening. And both of them happened right around the time I was getting back into wrestling in 2014. And so my happiest moment that I can have in wrestling, that I remember in wrestling, is Daniel Bryan winning at WrestleMania 30. I just remember at that point in time, like, that was when I was getting back into wrestling, and I was like the biggest Yes Movement fan, right? And this is going to be kind of sappy and stupid, but like, I was just out of I was about to enter my senior year in high school, and I'm going to be a little bit open, raw, and honest, and sappy. It's kind of stupid when I think about it, but at the time I was super, like, I was not in the popular crowd. I felt like I really didn't have any like friends or whatever, right? That it was one of those teenage angsty type feelings that when you look back at it, it's kind of corny. But like, I legitimately, like, everything that because I strictly remember the promo week after week after week where Triple H and Stephanie would call Daniel Bryan a B+ player. and he would never be enough to make it. And just absolutely feeling like I related to that, right? And so when he won and he beat Triple H in that first match at Mania 30, and he gets into the main event, and it's this banger of a match. And I don't remember every detail about the match, but what I remember the most was just the second he pinned. I don't even remember who he pinned. I think he pinned Orton. I could be wrong. I don't remember. I know it was him, Orton, and Batista, and I think Orton was the one that ate the pin. But I remember he got down on the pin, and they were counting, and it was 1, 2, and when it hit 3, as the entire arena exploded. I just remember, like, the emotion that I felt of just pure joy. Like, he did it. And if he can do it, I can do it. Right? And then the saddest moment would be several months, maybe a year later. Still my favorite wrestler at this time. Right? And he announces that he has to retire. And I don't remember the day, I don't remember the date, but I remember watching that. Just absolutely, and there's a close number 2, and that's Roman Reigns. And I was never, at this time, I was one of the Roman haters who was like, bro, they're forcing him down our throat. Boo, right? And this was, 2018 at this point, I think. And we had just had like 4 or 5 years of them forcing Roman down our throat as a baby face. And I remember the day Roman went into the ring and announced himself as Joe and said he had leukemia, like, that's a close second to me as far as saddest moment. And I think that they might be tied. Like, I hated Roman Reigns, like the character, but I don't know. There was just something about him saying I have leukemia and it's back, and then coming back saying he beat it. Right, that immediately made me a Roman Reigns fan. And then he came out and turned a heel, and that was freaking awesome, right? But yeah, Daniel Bryan winning is the happiest. Daniel Bryan having to retire was the saddest moment to me that I can remember in wrestling that I watched, right? Because that I can remember, like right. So that's the episode. I know I yapped a lot here. I don't know about you, I like this format where I just tell story time, and none of this was pre-programmed or pre-planned. I just sort of started yapping. And so, let me know what you all think about the episode. And until next time, my name is WETOODEEP. This is the Slap on Me Community Show. Until the next episode next week, you all have a great rest of your week. And we're just getting started here in 2026. Like, share, subscribe. And I will see you next Monday or Tuesday. Same time, same place. Here in the Slap and Meat Community Show.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride. Whether it's NXT or NFL time, going in the ropes and forth and deep. Slap and Meat Community every Tuesday. Go for the